All right, my friends, we're back and time to talk about some more weapon modifications. Today we're jumping into our first section of ranged weapons. We got some of the lower tier ones. We're going to get those out of the way because as we rank up here and get to some of the better weapons, there's a little bit more nuance. There's a few more things to talk about here, but we'll get started with some ranged weapons. We're going to talk the bow, the zip gun, and the Winchester today. Now, those that are a fan of the channel know I love me a good Winchester. I actually do. I'm going to talk about that, but let's get into it and jump right on in. We're going to try to do everything we've been doing in the past. If this is the first video you're checking out, we're doing a little series here. Go take a look at our Wasteland Survival guide. We're going to be walking through each of the weapons, best modifications, as well as a few tips and tricks, some things that you think about. I try to get all my info right, but every once in a while we make a little stumble, so be sure to check the comments in case there's anything that we missed. All right, let's talk about the bow. And really with these three weapons, I want to start off by saying, if you are starting to look at investing in your weapon modifications, specifically for your ranged weapons, you probably want to skip most of these. Now, there's a handful of easy ones that you can drop in. Some of the handles and a few of the other mods aren't too bad. They're not super resource heavy, but whenever you start talking ranged weapons, you get into the more difficult items to get that require you to install those mods. Things like factory parts, carbon composite, even to a certain extent now lenses have become a little bit more difficult because you're using those for the island region. So just keep that in mind. A lot of the things I'm talking about, especially with these three weapons, you're probably going to use them early. You might use them a little late game. I personally still use Winchesters if I'm going to go clear simple locations like the farm. Maybe do some basic alpha runs as well, just because you will stockpile them and you want to save your better weapons for other things. But genuinely, as I talk about these, just understand this is more like completion level type stuff. You're probably not investing in this, and you really genuinely shouldn't be, because you're going to quickly move on to bigger and better weapons, especially as you unlock more mods, and being able to save those resources up front is going to be very, very important for you. So quick PSA as we get in and start chatting about some of these weapons today. We've got the bow. The bow has a few different things. It's got a string. It's got whatever this thing is called, the bow part itself. We've got the strings that you're going to be able to modify. We've got some optics, and then I do like that they added a little quiver action here. Most of the weapons here today are going to be relatively simple. Talk a little nuance with the Winchester. You're going to see here with the bow, as you go on up, you're essentially just getting either crit damage, crit chance. You get to the composite bow part, you finally get both. So that's going to be an easy one here for you. The strings add some crit chance. They actually then on the top end too here add some additional damage, which isn't too bad. The one thing that you want to look out for specifically is the composite string, because we have an active ability point blank shot. This is actually really cool. With the bow, if you're not familiar, you can basically taunt it back. You can hold it for a little bit to kind of charge up your damage. If you hold it too long, there's a chance that you're going to miss. With this point blank shot, you actually just increase the damage if the distance is close. Now, that seems a little silly maybe for your ideas around using your close range weapons, but I have found a few small instances where this ends up being pretty helpful for you. And then you have optics, which again, you're just trading back and forth crit chance and crit damage for the first two. The last two are the ones that you want to be. You get some additional range, and you really can help to up your crit chance. Both of these are good options. Of course, you'd like to have the laser sight on this, but if you can't get that one, don't be afraid to go ahead and grab your sight ×2. It's pretty good. And then lastly, I actually really like how they did this. The quivers just give durability. I think that's pretty neat. Obviously, it's where you slot your arrows, but you can go ahead and build each of these. You get to the large quiver at the top, you're adding some additional durability. So that is pretty nice. So let's go and talk about these specifically in the modification screen. I'm going to pop up here on screen base damage and modified damage. No stink damage with these just because they're firearms. So unfortunately, you're not going to get the crits that way, but you will get your crits normally throughout the course of using the weapon. Here we can see it on its base as we go and we introduce the composite bow. You're going to see for the bow, again, that extra crit chance, extra crit damage. You get a little bit of weight reduction here. You go ahead, you throw the composite string on. This is going to be where your majority of extra damage comes from. So if you have, again, this polyethylene string, or your composite string. Obviously, you get the bonus for the active mod, which is helpful. But if you only have this blue one here, still not bad. It's still a pretty nice increase when we go to take a look at this. Let me change this as we go along here. So you have here your extra damage, boom, your extra damage, both going to end up working. Now, it is important to note that this is an extremely rare mod, so good luck finding it. It can be pretty difficult. If we change to here, this is just the blue mod. So you can make a decent bow out of some blue mods here, as you'll see we go along. Again, you're going to have the opportunity with your sight 2x, get the extra crit chance and range. You get an extra boost. We'll go ahead and change here to show you get that extra little boost here on crit chance with the laser sight. So definitely the round and the way you want to go. And then you can see just a little bit more, and a little bit more durability. You are adding some weight as you go along here. So do just keep that in mind. But boom, big durability boost here. That is going to be your best in-slot bow, which ends up being really, really nice. Now, the cool part is that you are going to potentially use this during your Hunter's event here, Hunter's Instinct event, which you can't throw on here. This would be one of the only main reasons maybe you want to look at investing in your bow. You can get some extra damage. You can get that cool active mod if you have it. Genuinely, though, I would probably tell you, again, it's not really worth the parts that you're going to throw in. But that is, of course, up to you and what you have in your supplies. As we jump down here, you're going to have our wonderful zip gun. You've got kind of like the action piece and then some barrel mods and some handles. This one's pretty self-explanatory as well. But what is interesting is that you do also have an active ability called the double shot, which shoots twice without a reload. This is actually really good. This gun, again, is not very good. If you use it early, by all means, great for simple things where you can run and gun a little bit like at the farm. Again, your basic normal mode alpha for some of your big frenzy giants. It's not a bad weapon. It's going to take a little while, but you can use it. This really does help this, though. It makes it a little bit more of a usable weapon. It actually refills, this active ability refills quite quickly. Plus, you get some additional attack speed modifiers and some extra crit chance. You do lose a little bit of damage. Basically, with two that give you additional speed, you lose some of the damage. If you've ever fired this weapon, you know it is horrendously slow. It's horribly slow, actually. And so getting these extra speed modifiers is a big help. You, of course, could go with one of these two, the improved bolt gun. Crit chance and range, that's fine. You do like some extra range here, but obviously the active ability with the double shot is very, very good. Then you're going to have two here. And this is not necessarily based on your personal choice. What I end up finding is that the handmade muzzle brake, it's not bad. It gives you some extra damage, which is nice. It does have a durability burn, not super impactful for this weapon. You do get a little additional noise, not too much to worry about here. What you do trade off with that, though, is you trade some damage off for 3 pips of crit chance, which is quite good, right? And I've actually found that this ends up, over time, being the better place to go with the handmade silencer, just because that extra crit chance actually does proc pretty good. You do lose a little bit of noise, which is fine, not super helpful in many situations, but you also do lose a little bit of range. That is something to kind of keep in mind between these two. Honestly, you could go either route. If you have either and you do plan on using this weapon a little bit, maybe you've got some spare parts or you've got a bunch of these and you're looking at putting some of these together, and you have the double shot, you could go the damage, or again, you could go the crit chance. Keep in mind that you're going to get some extra value here out of the crit chance when you're boosting all of these up. If you want a little bit of extra damage, you can go that route too. And then essentially, just for both grips, we have a little bit of durability and a little more durability. So that's an easy one to go ahead and choose. Let's jump over to the zip gun here. Very, very similar here as we go through. Some extra crit chance, a little extra range and crit chance here. You're going to see a DPS increase here. This is a reduction in your damage, but a big boost to speed, which is pretty interesting. So your DPS actually does go up here. But then when we throw this on, this is where you want. You do get that damage reduction, but you got the speed, you got the double shot, and look at your crit chance. You get a whole, basically, maybe 25% or so of that. So I think that's where you want to be. Like I said with this one, it's kind of a trade-off here. You get a little bit of range, but look at that extra crit chance that you're getting here. You're getting some additional damage. You lose a little bit of durability, add a little bit of weight. I genuinely think you could interchange these however you choose that you want to run. I think the crit chance ends up being pretty impactful. You do seem to proc with this pretty good at that high of a crit chance, especially if you're getting the double shots off of the active mod. But if you just went pure damage here, I wouldn't be mad at you. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad choice either. We'll get that increase. And then again, you just have durability here. You get a little weight reduction with this one, which is nice, but you get that big durability boost. I'll show you the difference between the two. It's pretty significant. Get a couple extra shots out of this one, or whatever this ends up being, which is pretty good. Now, it is important to note that on this one, oh, and on the bow, I think, what is it? Is it this that I think, I'm sorry, I skipped this really quickly. Going back to the bow really fast, the laser sight is also an extremely rare weapon mod, so good luck getting your bow fully maximized here. The only EX mod that you have on this is actually, hang on, let me change this really quick. Okay, I was gonna say, is this an EX mod? Wow, this is too. Okay, so sorry, I didn't check a few of these things before we got into the revolver here, as well as the active mod are both EX mods. You go down to white mods for both of these, so if you're lucky enough, hopefully you get the one with the active mod as you put this together. Then you have the silencer ends up being just a normal mod, and this comfortable grip ends up being a blue mod for you, which not too bad to put together, but you do got to get a little bit lucky here for your different actions with your zip gun. Okay, and the Winchester here has a couple of active mods not in the game yet, which is a little unfortunate because I'd love to see a few of these things. I think this would be pretty cool. I'm honestly really interested what this means if this ever comes to the game, but I digress from that. You have a handful of different mods here. You have stocks, which are basically going to be a trade-off between some additional durability, some additional damage, or you could just get the best looking one, which is the tactical stock, giving you both extra damage and 3 pips of durability, which is pretty nice. You got a couple of receivers here. Basically, both are good because they give you a nice little damage boost. A speed boost here with the vintage receiver is definitely the way that you want to go. And here's where this one gets a little interesting. Because again, you have a few different options. You have an improved barrel, which is good for crit chance and crit damage, or I'm sorry, regular damage. You have the vintage barrel that basically swaps out crit chance with crit damage. So I think these two generally pretty interchangeable. Then you jump up here and you go to the muzzle brake. 3 extra to damage, 2 reduction in durability, but you get an extra crit damage proc here, which is pretty good. And then you have the silencer, which is the most damage or tied for the most damage, with a big increase to crit chance, which is really nice, but it's the range reduction that you have to be careful on. Now, this is the one that I use, but I could honestly see some opportunity to use this muzzle brake. The only difficult part with this is the reduction in durability is going to hurt you a little bit, and you're essentially getting the same damage modifiers between the two. So if you want the most damage and the ability to get the additional shots, you definitely want to go the silencer. You have the muzzle brake, again, not a bad option, but you got to keep in mind that the durability burn, the range doesn't seem to be always as significant, but with this weapon, for some reason, it is. This is a pretty slow firing weapon as well. So if you do use this, you have to really just kind of hone this in. And what I found is sometimes I feel like the enemies are getting a little too close for comfort. Now, if you use it on slow moving enemies like your savage giants at the farm or your frenzy giants at normal alpha, not the crazy ones in the hard mode, this will work just fine. You'll have plenty of time to move away, but they are going to be closing that distance before you get an opportunity to get that shot in. So do just keep that in mind. Range becomes important. Then you have your handguard here, damage, durability, crit chance, damage, durability, crit damage. So this is an interesting one because you can add some extra damage and crit damage here with the handguard with the pouch on it. Get some additional durability here. You got a lot more fluctuation with how you go ahead and build this weapon. Now, I'm a sucker for aesthetic as well, so we'll talk about that, and you'll see these build. And then finally, you have the optics choice. Damage, and again, it's like damage and crit chance or damage and crit damage. It follows a very similar pattern. Here, you get some extra crit chance with a boost to the range and a reduction in speed. This is where the speed reductions really do compound if you're going to run the silencer and the 8x, which is what I do. It seems to help a bit with the range, but you have speed reduction now. Ends up just making it a pretty slow firing weapon. So keep that in mind, but you can't offset this a little bit if you want to go with that route. Both of these two sights, I think, are somewhat interchangeable. I do think genuinely, though, you want that extra crit chance. Whenever you can get that extra crit chance ends up being really, really nice. Jumping into the Winchester, let's talk about the final build here. And as you're going to see, some trade-offs here, durability change, DPS changes as we're going. A little bit of a damage boost there. Not a big damage boost as it might be noticeable, a little extra durability here. I want to just say this weapon does grow on you. As you see it kind of build out, it gets pretty sweet. They made this tactical. Here's your biggest boost, both the damage and durability. So definitely want to run your tactical stock. It is important to note that this is an EX mod. You're going to see a lot of these on this one, unfortunately. You have your two receivers here. This one is a regular mod, as is this one, which is nice. You do get a little bit of a speed. You basically just don't lose the speed. So you keep your DPS boosted there, which ends up being pretty good. As you start to take a look at barrels here, again, here's where I really think you can kind of play to your flavor here. You have your muzzle brake, which increase the damage and crit damage, a little bit of a durability burn there. As you swap over here, you see you get a reduction in range, boost back to your durability, and you get a nice crit chance. So essentially, you're exchanging, in my opinion with this, you're exchanging the damage for your ability to get crit hits. Choose if you want to do that. I think both could be fine. Honestly, are fine. I run the suppressor mostly just because I like the way that it looks. And again, I like having that extra crit chance and not losing the durability. So look at that change in here. Here you can see crit damage, a little bit of durability. You get a little damage boost here. 1 DPS if you want to go that route. If you go here, you get an extra boost to crit chance and crit damage. And then this one's your biggest boost here to crit damage, maximizing it while also pumping up your durability. So again, I could very likely see if you want to go and have a little bit more of a moderate build, you could run the reinforced handguard with this build and sacrifice a little bit of the crit damage that you can get for this. Now, your DPS does go up a little bit just based on your different stats here, so that is an option as we put it together. And then finally, you have your optics here, a little bit of crit chance boost and some damage, a little bit of damage boost here. This is where you can get some good crit chance and some of that range back. You do sacrifice a little bit of speed. I think this one ends up being fine. And then as we jump over here, pardon me really quickly, I need to just click this. And there we go. And this is where I think you can really maximize. So you do lose that speed. You get a bunch of that range back. But this optic on top, your 8x sight, ends up giving you that big boost to crit chance. So if you run it like this and instead maybe want to go this route, not a bad option either, right? Not a bad option either. You get some of that range back. You do sacrifice a little bit of that crit chance, but this makes it a little bit better to shoot from that range distance. You do lose a little bit of durability, which stinks a little bit. Obviously, you lose a lot of the aesthetic, in my opinion, of how this looks. But I think both of these are genuinely interchangeable if you have one over the other. Now, if you have it built like the way that we do, almost all of these mods are EXPPs, which is really unfortunate because this weapon is really cool. Doesn't have a ton of use. Like I said, farm, maybe a little bit of bunker alpha on normal mode. That's genuinely probably about it because it's a very slow firing weapon. It doesn't have a ton of DPS here, so it is something to note as well. Yeah, the only other cool thing that we did have in the past is we did have this get incendiary ammo. If you're not familiar with this, this was during the winter events, which was pretty sweet. So we'll see if this ends up coming back at some point. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. That made this weapon very, very useful. But unfortunately, not even this past time did we get this. This is lingering from 2 events ago, which is pretty interesting. So like I said, I'm going to finish up. I'm going to talk a little bit about damage because I forgot to chat with those. I probably popped them up as we were going. But I do want to just reinforce the thought I had at the beginning, which is save your resources for these. Install some cool stuff. Like I remember specifically like a couple of these wood stocks not being too bad. you want to get a little boost there, cool. If you want to go ahead and like install this or some of these, that's totally fine as well. Just again, keep in mind that it's probably not worth the resources. If you're mid to late game, you've already got a bunch of weapons in a good state, and you're just kind of trying to use up some resources, then I think you could throw some stuff here just to kind of pimp out your weapons and make them look cool. Other than that, though, probably not super helpful. Let's talk damage really quick on each of these different weapons, and we'll finish up with there. The bow, base damage 8. With the best modifications, goes up to a whopping 9. So that's a big one. Zip gun, base damage 18. Modified, it goes down to 17 on the screen, actually, which is pretty interesting. The difference you have to keep in mind is you have that double shot, which actually really helps to push up that DPS, so keep that in mind. And then Winchester goes from a base hit of 21 all the way to a modified hit of 29, which is pretty nice. I do wish they would bring in some of these, some of these active mods that we haven't seen. Specifically for the Winchester could be really cool. Some of these things that might actually make some of these weapons a little bit more useful. That's what we got for first set of ranged weapons. Keep tuned to the channel here. We're going to be covering the rest. We have a whole bunch of weapons still to do. We've done all of the melee weapons, so if you missed any of that, be sure to pop back. We're going to be getting into the next episodes, some of the goodies, some of the big ones, and we're still waiting on the Dragunov. So, but we've got a whole bunch of everything else built, ready to go, and we'll be bringing you some more weapon modification action. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing. We've got some cool events coming up here very soon, so be sure to stick around for that. We do deep dives on a whole lot of other topics in the game as well. Wasteland Survival Guide playlist, which you're in right now, has a whole bunch of topics for you to enjoy and to get to know the game a little bit better. We've got a free-to-play series that we're rocking around in and having some fun with. Plus, do a whole bunch on our main account here as well. Enjoy Last Day on Earth. So, hopefully you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Consider hitting that subscribe button. Really does help us out, and we'll be sure to catch you in the next one. Peace.